In my observation, feeling community, being tuned into each other, knowing what makes me happy or you happy or us happy or not, and being guided by, where is our creative energy firing more, that's much easier to do in a small community. You get to a certain point, and it's not possible for everybody to know everybody. It's not possible for even everybody to go up in one line of command. It's just unruly, unwieldy. And one of the really big challenges to me seems to be that the bigger the organization gets, the more people look at numbers, because that is the only way they can get their arms around what's going on in the organization. And numbers occasionally measure satisfaction, but not often.
Yeah.
And so the size of the organization, to me, seems to drive it pretty hard towards dollars.
Yeah.
Because that's all there is to measure.
Yeah.
There was talk about a double bottom line: social usefulness and benefit, and profitability. And I haven't really heard a whole lot about that lately. That was sort of a trend for a little while. But
yeah.
Small business is a huge part of the economy, but the big movers are the giant corporations. They have the organized money. They have the organized people together.
Yeah.
And they are just enormous in and of themselves. I would love to hear what you have to say about the size of community affecting that.
Well, I think there are first of all, there's some really smart people out there thinking about some of these issues. My take on it is that there's kind of two things that are working. Once a company reaches a certain size, like, why does it start to operate that way that you're describing? I think that there is kind of a law of numbers that tends to kick in. I think that the kind of the traditional hierarchy is really bad at being able to pass information up the ranks with high fidelity. There's lots of good studies that have looked at that, and so the things that can make it up are things that can be aggregated easily, like numbers, right? And so you do have the financials are the key driver, obviously, on that, and I'll come back to that in a sec. But at Microsoft, we had kind of like organizational health statistics. Mm-hmm. They weren't down to the level that I was talking about like what drives somebody's happiness over the course of a day. That was not a level of investment that the company was willing to make, and maybe that's overkill. Who knows? But what happens in these kind of hierarchies is as the information goes up, it gets watered down in very, in ways that reduce its usefulness. Mm-hmm. It's one of the critical failings of hierarchies, and there's lots of different reasons that happens. Some of it has to do with power dynamics. People reporting up and not wanting bad news to go up. Some of it is social dynamics that are at work. I've been reading The Wisdom of Crowds, the book The Wisdom of Crowds lately, and it's been so interesting. Some of the kind of subtle influences that we create around ourselves just by talking, right? Mm-hmm. We change our positions on things just like that instantly to fit in. And so I think that there's a lot of that kind of stuff when you get bigger organizations. More of those social dynamics and power dynamics kick in, and I think my observation is that a lot of the social and power dynamics they're tied. A lot of what happens when companies start becoming very dysfunctional in the way you're describing is that they're more looking in at themselves and the power struggles and the social dynamics of what's going on inside the company than on what's going outside. So that's something we could talk about later if you want. But a big focus for me is in thinking about network-based structures. They're not perfect at all. Like you still need that kind of centralizing, the ability to centralize power. You need that, but you can still do that in networks. So I think that there are kind of new structures that may help with this. And then the last thing is that I think a lot of this has to do with...
Okay, wait. So just what you mean by networks is a distributed network of people, not a tight organization of people?
Yeah. What I'm saying is, yes, sorry.
Okay.
I'm talking about networks that they can take many different forms in corporations. But another way of thinking about it is kind of more loose-knit teams that are more flexible. And there are lots of different kind of versions of these things. There's lots of kind of interesting new ways of organizing. And actually, if you look at the software development community, and particularly the open source community, there's some real innovation going on in that area. So I think that's one thing, is kind of looking at new models for organizing power like that. Fundamentally, I think we have to ask ourselves, in a networked future, where everybody's connected the way that we are today on places like Google Plus and Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, there's going to be much greater pressure on big organizations. It's going to be way easier for smaller groups of people to come together and collaborate. And that's going to make it harder and harder for the big firms. And people have been saying this for years, but we're now seeing the technology shift to like a completely different level. I mean, this is a whole other topic. But so anyway, I think that you do have some of these kind of organizational dynamics, the kind of power structures, social dynamics, power dynamics that are at work. But I think that the other big thing that is a contributing factor to what you're describing is that when companies go public, everything changes, right? It is really about the share price. And so, that I saw this happen at Microsoft. I wasn't there when it went public, but I was there when, right after Windows 95 shipped, and a lot of institutional investors came into the stock, and, things changed very quickly at Microsoft as a result of that. So, and this kind of gets back to the whole question of, is it a piece of property that's primarily there to maximize returns for the shareholders, or is it something else?
Yeah, and if it is something else, well, if it is a piece of property, how do you, as an individual, work within that to shift what you can? Yeah.
I mean, it's a challenge, and I think that, for me, the people I'm trying to reach with this message, and I'm now starting to focus more concertedly on this message. I'm actually much more interested in the younger generation, like the up-and-coming companies, because, what would it take to shift Microsoft or, General Electric, or, where would you even start? But I do think that, when I talk to young leaders, and, you talk to entrepreneurs, like the people who are starting businesses, they're usually, you've got some people who are just really trying to make a buck. But usually the most exciting ones are people who have some vision of changing the world. It may be a little, like a little thing that they're trying to change in the world, but they have a vision for how things should be different. And, those are the people who I think are ready for this message about, and, when you talk to them, and when they get hijacked, when funding comes in and takes over the company, you get venture capital that comes in maybe too heavy-handedly and, strips the company from them or something. There's a lot of, as I've been talking about some of this stuff, there are a lot of people who have stories to tell about, money coming in and kind of stripping a company of its deeper meaning.
So Gideon, we've covered a lot of ground of, thinking about organizations, thinking about what the drivers are for organizations, and, how that then affects us as individuals. But, what about the other way around? What about how people can be more soulful, more connected with each other, whether it's in an organization or not? Bringing soul to what we do, having meaning in what we do.
Right.
Everybody wants that.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. And, even just thinking about it from the perspective of what happens to the company, right? I mean, we've been talking about organization and technology, which are actually, like, in some ways, they're like two of the most powerful forces on the planet. Mm-hmm. Our ability to organize ourselves and, the technology. But there is one power that is more powerful, I think, and that's the human soul, right? I mean, if you think back and, it sounds kind of corny, but like think back to, Da Vinci, Martha Graham, Einstein, like these brilliant people who, going back to the thing I was talking about finding that destiny, that calling, right? They found it somehow, right? Mm-hmm. Their genius came out. Mm-hmm. And, I really believe that each and every single one of us has that inside us, and that when that's fully tapped, we may not be Einsteins, right? But in some way, we have some wonderful thing inside us that's waiting to come out. So, organizations that if an organization can tap that. Think about the power that organization truly has. I mean, you look at, so just a couple of examples of, I think that you look in the kind of the high-tech sector, the organizations that can tap just some aspect of that, like the creativity aspect of their employees, look at what happens at, Google. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time on Google software nowadays, and my interactions with the Google employees who I've run across, they're excited about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. The people at Groundwire were excited about what they were doing. I had one team that I ran at Microsoft. They were excited about what they were doing. So when that sense of excitement and purpose comes together in a group, when you can actually, I was talking about connection and meaning as these kind of two separate things. But when they connect, it's really, it's a wonderful feeling. It's the same thing that people feel when they're on a sports team and, they're winning, even if they're not winning, right? But they're competing well and they're working well with each other. That camaraderie, what I call a kind of a sense of fellowship, is so powerful. And, I have a couple of personal examples of these are kind of more networks that I was involved in that were able to kind of create that very deliberately. So one of them, there's a guy, his name is Robert Gass, and he is a leadership trainer. Do you know him?
I don't know him personally, but I know who he is.
Yeah. So he's this wonderful leadership trainer. He works with the Rockwood Leadership Program out of the Bay Area, and I did a couple. While I was at Groundwire, I did a couple of. I was actually one of the fellows there, so I did a year-long program with him through Rockwood, and got to meet these amazing leaders from around the country working on. These were like serious social change leaders. What Robert did to bring that group together, in terms of helping us find our calling, helping us tune into this greater part of ourselves, right? This kind of bigger mission inside each one of us, was really powerful, and it wasn't, was it woo-woo? Yeah, a little bit, but it was really grounded in like, here's what you got to do to run your organization, so it was this kind of, again, that teeter-totter of like, you got to work hard. You also got to think about this on a deeper level. And so, the connections that came out of that group were just amazing. There's another group I'm connected with up in British Columbia called the Web of Change, and this is a gathering that happens once a year out on an island, Cortez Island. These are a lot of technologists, a lot of consultants working on technology, but also on kind of marketing, but all aimed at social change. And then it's also some of the social change organizations who those consultants work with. That group is also very deliberate about building that sense of community and connection. And it's been amazing. People go into that thing. It's a 3-day retreat. And people come out of it just blown away by the experience, that kind of level of trust that they build in 3 days. But it's amazing. So these kinds of things that I'm talking about here can be built. They can be created. They can be facilitated, with people who are skillful, or by people who are skillful. This isn't just kind of imaginary stuff. There are companies that, have this magic. They may not be angels, right? They may have, just like all of us, right? They have their warts. But they are figuring out how to tap aspects of this. And I am hopeful about this.
Well, and, it's another sort of thread running through all that is the community aspect. Like you say, people come together and they come out amazed at what they've been able to do in a short amount of time with people who had common purpose and common goals and common values, and were all excited in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, to me, part of that, and if it's in a workplace, whatever kind of place that is, part of what is so rewarding about that community is knowing I can do more in the community than I can do alone. And each person is amping up the other person's potential, whether that's creative or, insight, whatever it is. It's to reach beyond, in a qualitative way, to reach beyond what you can normally do, to be more and give more. And that's where the feeding happens. That's where the feeding of your own soul happens. And you do a lot to have that and build that and perpetuate that.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful experience.
Yeah. Agreed.
So Gideon, for somebody who wants that more in their own life, for somebody who maybe the organization is neutral, maybe they're not magic and maybe they're not terrible, maybe they're just sort of neutral. What can a person do? Surrounding yourselves with like-minded people is a big deal, but not everybody is in a position to do that.
Right.
How do you move toward that, toward a more soulful kind of work?
Yeah, I think the first step is to start looking. To really start. It's scary to start asking for more than what we have right now, right? Especially in these economic times. Many of us just feel like we're lucky. Many people feel like we're lucky to have jobs right now. So, I really shouldn't push it. That's true and that's fair. And, I would be stupid to say, if you're kind of on the edge right now, quit your job and go, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that I think a kind of a first step is to, if this does resonate, if the things that you and I are talking about resonate with people, I think the first step is to start talking. Talk to the people around you. Try to get a sense for are there other people around me here who feel the same way? Mm-hmm. Is this something that is shared by the people around me? Because while I think that everybody does have this inside them, not everybody is able to talk about it. Not everybody's able to actualize it, to bring it out and do something about it. So I think that's kind of the first step is look around, start having some of those conversations about why you're there, about what gives you and your compatriots a sense of meaning and purpose and connection in the organization. And if it looks like there's something there, then I think the best way to do this kind of stuff is really if you're not running the organization, is to start trying to shift some of the culture. I've seen people do it. There were a couple people at Groundwire who shifted our culture in ways that were really good, and they were not running the organization. I was running the organization, but they shifted it in some particular directions and they just did it by doing it, right? They didn't sit around and talk about it. I mean, they talked maybe to each other a little bit in advance, but they just basically started doing, not saying. Mm-hmm. It was great. So that's the first thing. I think then the second thing is if you do look around and you go like, it's just not happening here. There's no way, these aren't really my peeps. These are not the people, these are not the droids we're looking for. Or maybe these are the droids and I'm not looking for them. So I think that in that case, it's not talking, it's walking, right? It's like, and this is the hardest part. This is the scariest part because this is the part where it means, finding that quiet time when you can go off and try to listen to what your gut is telling you about what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm lucky because my wife is a life coach, and so I have kind of built-in life coaching in my house. Not everybody has that, but I do think that most of us have friends who care about us, or family who care about us. And I think that, one of the hard parts about family sometimes is family gets scared for us, mm-hmm. And, don't want us to make sudden moves, don't want us to, shake things up. But sometimes friends are a little bit more willing to go there with us. And really what you need is somebody to just be there and ask questions and kind of help you, help hold you accountable to what you're trying to do, to trying to make the shift. And if you can afford, and if you can connect with a life coach or somebody like that, I mean, that's great. Because, what I've found is that, life coaches the good ones are really good at asking questions, helping to kind of pull out what that is that's inside of you that's trying to come out, mm-hmm. and then also hold you accountable for getting there. Putting a plan, helping you to put a plan in place to actually mm-hmm. doing something, because that's getting off your butt and doing something when you're already busy at work. You've got maybe stuff at home, you've got a bunch of other things going. So this is like, it's easy to walk away from this, and especially when it's scary. But I do think that, oftentimes it does mean making a shift in your life. Finding this kind of stuff, finding these kinds of organizations sometimes means leaving the ones that you know. Mm-hmm. And that's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. And I think the best, it really does require trusting, having some faith that there is some destiny for you out there, and acting on it even when it may not make sense to other people.
I think one of the other things is that it's okay to dabble sometimes too. There's the livelihood. Most people have a primary livelihood. Not everybody, but most people do. They have their job. But a lot of people have room or make room for one other thing that is work, but not paid work.
Yeah.
If you volunteer, if you're active in your church, if you're serving your community, if you're doing whatever, that's work too. If you're doing something in your home, if you're redoing your backyard, if whatever it is, there are other ways to work. And sometimes it feels more doable. It's just a place to start if you can, in that part of your life, try to be the fire starter there, or find other kindred spirits and see what that feels like, and just explore what you can do with that as a way to start building. Because a lot of people are not used to listening to their gut. If you ignore it long enough, the sound gets quieter. It takes a while to get back tuned into
true.
that.
That's true. No, that's a great idea. I think that's great advice. Yeah. I agree.
It's been really fun talking with you, Gideon. I've appreciated it greatly.
Yeah.
And I look forward to a lot more conversations, maybe not taped for everybody else to hear, but I'm really excited about what you're doing and what you're writing, and how also being along to see how you're sort of coalescing your own messages and seeing how you can be the agent of change in the world. It's a really great story to watch as it unfolds.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Well, like I said, I think in my note to you, I mean, I know from talking to CJ how hard it is to ask good questions, and these are really good questions. They really got to the essence of what I'm trying to do, and, you know, in a way that wasn't like completely obvious. Like sometimes, right? You know, sometimes people ask like the obvious questions, but you asked questions that were really, you know, they got to like some interesting aspects of this.
Well, thanks. You know, I asked what I wanted to hear, and hopefully what, you know, people, my big lifers, will be interested in too. But
yeah.
It's easy when people are doing interesting stuff, then there's lots of stuff to ask them.
That's